Thanks everybody for joining us for our webinar, AT and the IEP OKEdPlan Updates. And I'm Kimberly Berry, AT teacher for AbleTech. Dina Anderson is our presenter for today. She is AbleTech's occupational therapist. She has many years experience working in public schools, and she has real life experience working in OKEdPlan, which is really exciting. If you are confused about where to document assistive technology in the IEP, in OKEdPlan, then we hope to provide you some guidance today. Dina will explore recent changes to OKEdPlan, and she'll answer the burning question, where should you document assistive technology devices and services in a student's IEP? So I hope everybody's had a great start to their school year, and nobody's too stressed out about IEPs yet. Today, we're going to be talking about where you're going to document that you've considered the need for AT. We hope to unconfuse the issue of the special factors question regarding assistive technology. And we're going to talk about the three main areas of the IEP that may require documentation of AT and what that looks like within EdPlan. So when we talk about consideration of assistive technology, we want to remember that it is required by law that all students on IEPs are considered for the need for assistive technology. The entire team should have a short conversation during the IEP meeting about the need for assistive technology devices and services. If that's news to you, you might want to sign up for our consideration and AT assessment workshop, because we go into it in more detail there. I would love to talk more here about that, but we have a time constraint, so I'm not going to be able to go into that further. But I also want to just kind of review that this should not be determined ahead of time by the teacher or anyone else on the IEP, and it really shouldn't be indicated on the IEP ahead of time. Now, having said that, let's look at how this works actually in EdPlan. So this is a screenshot, and I realize you may not be able to read everything, but just you're familiar enough probably with EdPlan to know that this is the special factors section of EdPlan. It's on the Strengths and Needs tab. And what I want to point out here, and I'll show you, I'm hopefully going to a live demo of EdPlan here in a minute if all works well, but at the top there's a little info box. And there's a bit.ly address there, and that's going to give you some additional information you might find helpful when you are considering the need for AT. So this is what I call the input screen. I don't know if that's the real technical software term or not, but it's what I'm calling it. It's the input screen. The next slide actually shows us what it looks like when you print, and this is looking different. Last school year we worked with OSDE and PCG to come up with a better way to be able to document the consideration of assistive technology, something that is hopefully more clear. And also make sure that people who are involved in the team, everyone in the team, know that it's up for discussion, because now those columns that say yes and no are going to print on your draft IEP. And so rather than just the yes or no, whichever one was marked, printing, now they're both going to print. Ideally, we would not have anything checked ahead of time, but the software was not able to do that, I guess. So it's still going to indicate something, but hopefully the parents and everybody involved is going to know that we can have a discussion about this, because it is supposed to be a discussion in the IEP team meeting. Now, what I want to point out, unfortunately, there's a little bit of a discrepancy. PCG hasn't gotten everything updated yet. So when you're on the input screen, you're going to see the question on number 5, has the team considered assistive technology necessary to implement the student's IEP? And in most cases, well, in all cases, you really should answer that type of question yes, because you've considered it. So yes, you've considered it. But really what the question should be asking, as you can see in the printed format, is has the team determined that assistive technology is necessary to implement the student's IEP? And then if so, describe the AT devices and services that are needed. So when you're on the input screen, you need to realize that a yes answer means yes, it's been determined necessary, and you're going to need to put more information. A no answer is determined not necessary. And so I know that we've had multiple questions in the past year
that have asked, well, we say we're considering it, but we don't need it. So how do we answer that yes/no question? So hopefully, knowing this, knowing how it prints to the IEP, you will have a better way more knowledge to answer that question now. So here's a sample kiddo, and if I click on IEP process, I hope everybody's able, I hope this can switch through. Okay. Okay, so when you scroll down to the consideration of special factors, you'll see that yes, it still looks like it used to, but then when I go to my documents, and I've got a draft IEP saved here, then this is how it's printing. And it says, in this case, that yes, the team has determined that assistive technology is necessary to implement the student's IEP. The rest of it didn't get answered. The idea behind this is that you have room, a little bit anyway, to actually write things in the IEP meeting, because it is a working document, and we obviously do want the whole IEP team involved in decisions that are made. So hopefully you have a room there to add some information. And I have put a message out to PCG about hopefully getting the wording on the input screen changed. So hopefully that will get fixed sooner rather than later. So let's talk about, once you've decided that AT is necessary, how we're going to document it. What I want to be sure and stress is that where you document assistive technology is not as important as just making sure you effectively explain the assistive technology and its use. There are 3 possible locations that you would put assistive technology on the IEP, and it may be any or all of these depending on the situation. You may put it in the overall objective statement, you may put it in goals and objectives, or you may put it in supplementary aids and services, or maybe 2 or all 3 of those. When you're putting it in the overall objective statement, you want to be sure you're including the need for assistive technology. And to do that, you want to discuss the student's abilities and challenges. You want to discuss how the disability affects progress in the general ed curriculum. And here, it's helpful to include a comparison to same-aged peers. What's everybody else doing? What would be the expectation of this student in comparison to everybody else? And then you want to include features of AT that enable access to the curriculum. And if AT is already being used, be sure to include a description of the success. So again, here's a screenshot of the overall objective statement, and flipping back to OKEdPlan and my test kiddo. So this does not have information related to AT. This is just a test box here, but you would include that information in that box. And I have a couple of samples. And I'll be honest, this was pretty hard to just make up information about, so don't hold me to these examples. I tried my best to give some different types of assistive technology categories and how you might write these. If you've got someone that needs a speech-generating device, it might be that Marcus is nonverbal with his speech-generating device, and here you would include the needed features of those devices, but not being the speech pathologist, I didn't feel comfortable putting those in right now. He is able to respond to questions during calendar time and communicate his needs, such as the need to use the restroom, as his peers do. So you can see that I have put in a comparison to same-aged peers. I've put in how he makes progress in the general ed curriculum. I would put in features of AT if I was a speech pathologist and knew more about those things. And I also talked about his success that he has with the AT. For a visually impaired student, you might say she has difficulty accessing the printed textbooks used by her peers. She requires a magnifier with certain features, such as how many times the magnification is or whatnot, at her desk to be able to read aloud with the class and read individually. And maybe for a hearing impaired student and wears hearing aids, academically he's on grade level and he socializes with his friends appropriately. However, he is not responding to questions in his 8th grade classroom. An assistive technology assessment is being initiated to determine if he requires AT to participate in the general education classroom as his peers do. So this would be an example of you've considered the need for assistive technology and you're saying, hey, yeah, he's not succeeding right now in this one area of class participation as he needs to, and so we need to look at AT. And so this might be how you would document that in the overall objective statement. Okay, area 2 that you would be looking at is goals and objectives. I want to do a quick review of writing measurable goals and objectives because I know this is something that I struggle with if I'm not really focused on it. And I've taken this information from a great book that if you don't have, you might want to get a copy of. I get no royalties from this. I just think it's a very easy book to read and very explanatory. And the actual reference to it is in the references page at the back of the PowerPoint presentation. But remember that your goals and objectives, and I will use those two words interchangeably, so forgive me, but you want to make sure they describe how you're going to measure the progress, and you want to be sure that it can be measured by several people with the same results. Is the person sitting next to you in the room going to be able to see exactly the same thing you did, or is there a subjective nature to it? That's what you don't want. It needs to allow a calculation of how much progress has been made, and you need to be able to measure it without additional information, such as their starting point. So goals that say will increase blah, blah, blah by such and such percent, if you don't know where they started, it's going to be a little hard to measure that. So that's just a little bit of a review on how to write goals and objectives, the important points to it. So when you're writing these goals and objectives, you want to write it in terms of what you're already addressing. Are you already addressing a functional, academic, or a school-related task that they are unable to succeed in, but would be able to succeed with assistive technology? You are not writing assistive technology goals. You will notice back on the front page, I'm just going to flip there real quick, back to this page on the IEP, on EdPlan. This area of educational needs, there's nothing about assistive technology here. This is the academics, the motor, the speech and language, the social emotional. There's nothing on here about assistive technology needs. So there should not be straight assistive technology goals. But if you need to, if the student needs it to be able to do their educational tasks, then that's where you would write it in. I will put a caveat on that though. If them learning to use the device is critical to be addressed in the IEP, then that might be an objective as part of the goal. And we'll look, that might make more sense here in a minute. Here's a screenshot of the goals and objectives page. Flipping back to there we go, just a blank one. Again, area of need, it's not going to say assistive technology. It's going to be whatever you're working on. And when you, EdPlan, gives you these little tidbits that say will do what and under what conditions. The under what conditions is the great place to put assistive technology because it's what they need. And then everything else will be just like it always is. The person responsible, the score type and target score, how you're going to evaluate, and the addition of objectives. So some examples. You'll notice that I've started each one with using the assistive technology. That's the conditions. And I've taken these basically from my same examples of that I did in the objective statements, sorry, but they may not be completely equivalent. Like if you're really going to look at this student, then this goal and objective might not be that exact situation, but it'll be close. Just I'm trying to give you the kind of the idea of how you might say it in an objective statement and you might say it in goals and objectives. So with Marcus, using his speech generating device, he will respond to questions at calendar time 75% of opportunities. Because they're wanting him to respond more and be a part and participate, but he needs that speech generating device to do so. And Lily was the visually impaired student. Using a magnifier at her desk, Lily will accurately read the social studies textbook aloud during her turn with 80% accuracy. And Johnny with the hearing impairment, using a personal amplification system, Johnny will respond to 90% of questions posed to him in the general education classroom. So if you're taking my objective statement about Johnny, if you remember, it said we were going to do an AT assessment to see if he needed AT. Well, I wouldn't have the goal and objective right now because we're not to that point. We're just doing the assessment. But if we did determine that he needed it, then that might be a goal that might be used. The third place is supplementary aids and services. Again, just a little bit of a review about what goes in this section. We're going to, through this section, facilitate a student's participation in things like the general education classroom, other education-related settings, and any extracurricular or non-academic settings. And in this area, you're referring to any aids, services, or other supports. So an aid might be the actual device. The services might be the assistive technology services that have to come along with the device in order for the student to be successful with it, such as training, and then any other supports. And with supplementary aids and services, you are trying to make sure that the student can be with the non-disabled children to the maximum extent possible. And so if you've been to our trainings, you've heard us talk about how if a student needs the text read aloud to them and they have to go to the special ed classroom to do that, but if they had a text-to-speech device in the classroom with them, then they might be able to stay in the general ed classroom. Then that's kind of that LRE, that least restrictive environment, and you're enabling the student to be with the non-disabled children in a greater capacity by doing that. So think about that in terms of supplementary aids and services and assistive technology. You find this under the services tab, and this is kind of a reminder box again. You can either add services from a list, or you can add custom supplemental aids. In these boxes, and I'll show you a screenshot and a live demo here in just a second, we want to include the training time, the number of sessions, the session length, and training details. And those details might be who, how, when, or where. You may also need to include implementation. When exactly is that device going to be used? Who's going to use it? Who's going to be involved? How is it going to be used? And under what circumstances will it be used? Here's our screenshot. And flipping over to actual ed plan. It's on the services tab. And you go down to add supplemental aids. It gives you a little support box here. Please describe how and when each supplementary aid will be used. Include time spent training the student on the use of device, who will train, number and length of sessions, as well as how the device will be implemented into the student's curriculum. So there's these boxes up here that give you lots of potential options that you may need, from adapted eating utensils, computer access, braille, visually impaired, hearing impaired, speech language needs. And so if the device that you need or the category that's needed is listed here, boom, all you've got to do is, I'll pick pencil grip since I'm an OT, is click on it. Now, if they need training for it, you're going to want to put in the number of sessions that they need training and the session length and the start date and the end date. Now, this is, sometimes we don't really know, but think about this. We don't always know hardcore stuff on how to write the IEP anyway. We're making our best guess on things, and it's called a working document. So if we need to, we go back in and change it. If you say you need 5 sessions of 10 minutes in length and that's not enough, you go back and revise the IEP. So make your best guess on what you need, and maybe it's a week. You're going to do 5 sessions, 1 session a day for 20 minutes. Well, you don't really need this time for a pencil grip, but we're just going to go with it for today. And this is a week, so we're going to start it. We'll start it next Monday. No, not next Monday. We'll start it on the 5th. And we'll go to the 11th for 5 sessions. And then on here, I'm going to put the training. And I'm going to put who and where and who's involved. So it might be that the occupational therapist will train the teacher and the student on the appropriate positioning of the pencil grip. Okay, I'm really stretching there for 20. I'm not going to do that for 20 minutes, but I hope you get my idea. And then I'm probably going to need to go down and do the same thing down here, put pencil grip in again. Now I'm probably not going to put number of sessions and session length because I'm talking about implementing this into his daily schedule. And so I'm going to put probably, again, this is not hard and fast, but it's a good guess at this point. Put in the IEP dates, and we're saying this IEP starts on the 5th. I get that right? Yeah. 9/5/2017 to 9/4/2018. And then I'm not going to put anything in the training box. And over here, I'm going to say, student will use pencil grip daily when completing written work. Okay. If it's a speech generating device, I might say he will use it during calendar time. He might, if it's a written component like speech to text. I'm sorry, I say those backwards every time if I'm not thinking about it. No, I did say that right. Speech to text. Because they have difficulty with handwriting, you might determine what length of assignment that they need because they're not going to do it for everything. They're probably not going to do it for a worksheet or a spelling test. Well, they might do it for a spelling test because you want to know they wrote the words right. But really short assignments, you're probably not going to do it. So maybe you would say for implementation that they will use the speech-to-text software for any assignment longer than 3 sentences or something like that, whatever the team decides is appropriate. But that's the kind of information you want to put for under what conditions or under what circumstances. Now, what happens if your device is not in this list, right? Or you need more than 4 devices. If you need more than 4 devices, you can click add more and you get more. But if it's not in your list, you just come down here to add custom supplemental aids and you can type anything you want in that box. You're not tied to anything. You would just continue to do the number of sessions, session length, start and end dates, and the training and implementation as we discussed above up here. But you're getting to type in whatever you need, whatever that student needs. You're not tied to any particular list. So a little bit of a review. We talked about special factors, and that's kind of really what we really wanted to be able to share with you today was the changes that we were able to get accomplished with the update in IEPPlan this summer. And it's not perfect, considering that the input screen does not ask the same question as it shows up on the printed IEP, but at least it's better because now you get to check it in the meeting and you get to have the team discussion and you have room to write based on that team discussion. And remember that where you document the AT is not as important as making sure it is effectively explained, and overkill is not bad. If you feel like it needs to be, if you feel like it's not explained well by putting it in the objective statement, and you need to, well, actually, if you feel like it's not explained well enough in the goals and objectives or supplementary aids and services, and you want to explain it better, then the objective statement is a great place to do that. Here's my handy-dandy resources. If you're not familiar with our AT Technical Assistance Guide, you can access that through our AbleTech website on the services for PK through 12th. There's also a AT Internet Modules program out there that you can access for some great information. It's not state-specific. It's just general information about assistive technology for schools. And then here's the information on the book that I referenced for writing goals and objectives. Okay. Do we have any questions?
Yes, we do, Dina. So the first question was, where and what do we need to put on the services page of the IEP when a child needs it or needs AT? Sometimes the AT is required all day, and she gives the example of an FM unit, when other times the child may only be using the AT on an as-needed basis. She says the choices in the drop-down often do not seem appropriate.
Okay, if I'm understanding the question correctly, how to decide when and where to use it, and that's when you would need to just stipulate under what circumstances. So if he needs an FM system all day, then you would just indicate that in the implementation box, that he would need it anytime he is in a surrounding where he needs to be able to hear the auditory input. For situations where it's as needed, you would need to kind of indicate what situations make it as needed. When there's background noise, when there's, I'm thinking of the FM system specifically, but, or like my example of speech to text. If it's, longer than so many sentences or so many words. So just think about what circumstances it's needed. When is he not successful, and what you want to be able to do to make him successful. And then the drop-down list, I'm guessing that question was related to the we're just going to go back to this. I'm guessing that was related to this, that the drop-down box doesn't always give you what you need, and that's when you come down here to custom supplemental aids and type in whatever your little heart desires. Well, within reason.
Okay, thanks for answering that question. And then Mia's second question was, under consideration of special factors, the question reads, has AT been considered for this student? In our district, we consider for every student and go through a consideration checklist. However, most often the team determines that it is not required for the student. When this box is checked, yes, it forces you to add supplemental aids services on the service page. It will not let you save and continue without adding. So we need to document that it has been considered, but how do we do that without checking yes under consideration? I know this is what you talked about a little bit before.
Yes, this is what I talked about, because this was a big issue, because people were trying to answer this question as it's worded. Has the team considered AT necessary? And they were trying to say yes, they considered it, but then IEPlan wants you to put in more information elsewhere. So now you can say no, even though it looks wrong here. It looks like you're saying you haven't considered it. When you look then at the draft, it's going to say, why is it giving me this? Oh, because I haven't saved. Then when you look at the draft, it's going to say the right thing. So it says, I hope y'all can see this. Has the team determined that assistive technology is necessary to implement the student's IEP? And this is where the yes is still clicked, but it's probably because I didn't save it. Well, I know, because I already did this draft and saved it. That's why. But if I had just made a new draft, then the no would have shown up, and it would answer the question like Mia expected it to be answered.
Okay, thanks for covering that again. Carrie Bodie asks, does IEPlan still force you to fill in supplementary aid section if you mark yes on special factors?
Okay, so this is a very popular question still. Again, I think I've answered that, hopefully. I think we got that figured out this summer. Again, it's just the difference between the input screen and the actual printout. If you do mark yes on the input screen, then at this point you're saying yes, they need AT, and yes, it's going to require you to put something in supplemental aids and services.
Okay, so I believe that's it. Dina, did we have any more questions? No? All right, well, thank you all very much for joining us. That concludes our workshop for today. Thanks, and have a great afternoon.